When I fired that air rifle, I had no idea I'd sparked a war that would end a 15-year HOA reign of terror. A $700 fine for scaring a squirrel? Outrageous. But Margaret Vaughn, our control-obsessed HOA president, didn't realize her violation notice had activated a legal trap buried in my property deed clause that would dismantle her empire. Where are you reading this from? Share your craziest HOA story in the comments. And let me tell you how protecting my garden ignited a neighborhood revolution. I'm Daniel Reed, 40, a project manager who moved to Oak Ridge Estates 6 months ago, craving peace after a chaotic career. The flawless lawns and identical mailboxes screamed order, but beneath the suburban gloss lurked a ruthless HOA led by Margaret, a retired corporate auditor with a dictator's streak. My immediate problem was squirrels, which ravaged my vegetable garden despite every humane deterrent. The realtor had praised the community's protective covenants, but neglected to mention the 200-page rulebook dictating everything from approved curtain shades to a ban on lawn gnomes. At closing, the attorney handed me the binder with a tight smile. I barely glanced at it. First misstep. Helen Harper, my 72-year-old neighbor with a keen gaze and warm voice, offered advice early on. Try sound repellers, she said, eyeing my shredded peppers. The HOA's picky about visible devices. A retired archivist, Helen had lived in Oak Ridge since its first homes rose. Over tea, she murmured, Margaret checks lawns with a ruler. Poor Lisa Grant got fined $150 for grass a quarter-inch too long. I tried traps, sprinklers, even a fake owl. Nothing worked. One Saturday, watching a squirrel demolish my cucumber vines, I lost it. I grabbed my old air rifle, ensured no one was around, and fired a pellet from my deck. It didn't harm the squirrel, just sent it fleeing. Issue resolved, I thought. That evening, Helen appeared, anxious. Daniel, I saw the shot. The HOA bans hunting devices. I chuckled. It's a pellet gun, Helen. Hardly a weapon. The next day, a violation notice arrived. $700 for unauthorized trapping devices and hunting in a residential area, signed by Margaret with a scrawled note. Further violations incur steeper penalties. Buried in the rulebook, between patio umbrella specs and mailbox rules, was a clause banning forceful wildlife deterrence. Furious, I headed to the HOA office in Margaret's oversized Victorian, which sported unapproved azaleas and a non-standard mailbox, blatant double standards. Margaret, 62, sat in a pristine office adorned with compliance awards. Her silver hair was pulled tight, her blazer immaculate. Mr. Reed, she said, not rising. $700 is standard. We value wildlife safety. I argued the squirrel was wrecking my garden, but she interrupted. Gardening may not be for you. Our landscaping service suffices. Her voice sneered at individuality. When I pushed back, she leaned forward. Oak Ridge has rules, Mr. Reed. If they don't suit you, perhaps you don't belong. I gripped the doorframe. Is that a threat? Her smile was icy. Just a suggestion. Fuming, I pored over the rulebook, spotting vague terms like neighborhood character that Margaret weaponized. Penalties ranged from fines to liens, even forced repairs at the homeowner's expense. This was no HOA, was a control grid. At a local cafe, I met Sophia Alvarez, a 33-year-old journalist who lived nearby. Heard about your squirrel fine, she said, flashing a press pass. I got slapped with $450 for 2 tall daisies. Margaret's Shade Squad patrols with color charts. We traded tales, joined by former residents. One left after fines for incorrect taupe blinds. Another battled for a disability ramp, facing relentless checks. It's a regime, Sophia said. Margaret punishes defiance, and fear keeps people quiet. That night, my garden was vandalized. Herbicide-soaked fertilizer killed my plants. With a note, learn your place. I installed cameras. Days later, they caught a woman in an HOA polo sneaking in at 3 a.m., dumping more poison. The footage was grainy, but this was Margaret's retaliation. Sophia introduced me to George Mitchell, a 65-year-old former board member whose craftsman home now showed neglect. I questioned Margaret's budget 7 years ago, he said. Her cousin's firm got every maintenance contract. When I spoke out, they rewrote rules to target my house. Craftsman-only paint bans, unique mailbox restrictions. I couldn't sell without losing everything. His health crumbled under the stress. He handed me old HOA files. Dig into these. Margaret's built a fortress. George's records hinted at issues with Margaret's property. Her lot, expanded by a gazebo, seemed to encroach on a community park. I called my brother, Michael, a real estate attorney. Sending him the HOA docs and George's files, I got a call hours later. Daniel, your land was part of historic hunting grounds. Minnesota Law Article 242.8 protects pest control hunting rights on private lots, overriding HOAs. Your deed preserves these rights. He found a counter-strike clause. Any attempt to restrict those rights triggers a full HOA rule review, halting enforcement. Margaret's fine had handed me a legal grenade. Michael, Sophia, and I formed Operation Free Oakridge, turning my dining room into a strategy hub. Michael tackled deed history, Sophia interviewed ex-residents, and I probed HOA finances. Margaret's 15-year rule was a masterclass in coercion. She tightened restrictions slowly, normalizing her grip. Sophia uncovered Margaret's tactic, targeting valuable lots with fines until owners sold cheap to her allies. She's gaming real estate, Sophia said, showing sales to Margaret's associates. Michael found a 1990s petition preserving hunting rights, tied to a subdivision sign. Defend Our Hunt, 1987. Article 242.8 was a bulwark against suburban overreach, and Margaret's violation had exposed her flank. Helen shared decades of HOA minutes, revealing Margaret's hunting bans were power plays, not safety measures. She crafted rules to dominate, Helen said, her archivist's notes impeccable. An anonymous note invited me to a concerned residents' meeting. Helen identified the handwriting as Carla, Margaret's loyalist. It's a trap, she warned. They'll record you to twist your words. My cameras caught Carla measuring my fence at 5 a.m., fishing for violations. I added motion lights, but the stress wore me down. She wants you rattled, George said. It broke me. Sophia learned Margaret had pitched a condo deal to Greenview Builders, partly owned by her cousin, but it failed when owners like my home's prior resident refused to sell. Satellite images showed Margaret's gazebo crossing park boundaries. We needed a survey but delayed to avoid alerting her. After a storm, I helped Helen clear her yard, finding 1980s clippings about Oakridge's hunting past. Developers agreed to preserve deed rights, she said. Most forgot, but I kept records. Her archivist habits were gold. At the monthly HOA meeting, Margaret shamed me, displaying my sprinklers and air rifle as lethal threats. She proposed a $1,300 fine and a behavior contract. Her shade squad, nodded in sync. I explained the squirrel damage, but her drama overwhelmed my logic. Helen stood. Daniel tried every humane method. This is unfair. Margaret snapped. The board decides, Mrs. Harper. Helen replied. Section 5.2 demands equal enforcement. I've recorded 14 cases where similar acts got slaps on the wrist. The room stilled. Margaret, shaken, rushed to vote, passing the fine. Outside, Helen whispered, Don't show defeat. Come by tomorrow. Helen's files detailed Margaret's abuses, selective fines, unvoted rule changes, inflated budgets. I've waited for a fighter, she said. Michael called, excited. Your deeds clause is a legal override. Margaret's fine suspends all rules for review. Hope surged. We planned our move, but Margaret struck first. Police arrived, claiming I'd threatened Carla. I spent hours at the station, debunking the lie. An officer sighed. HOA feuds rarely get this vicious. Home. I found trouble burned into my lawn, my cameras blacked out. I nearly gave up, but Sophia rallied me. She wants you gone. In my late uncle's files, I found a 2006 case Oakridge versus Heritage Alliance where he'd upheld hunting rights, setting a precedent. His lawyer, Alan Cohen, confirmed, Your uncle's counterstrike clause voids HOA oversteps. My car was next, spray-painted with Get Out. I drove it through Oakridge, windows down, exposing Margaret's tactics. Michael and I confirmed the clause's power. It paralyzed HOA rules during review, neutering Margaret. We rallied Helen, George, Sophia, and 6 oppressed residents. George said, She isolates victims. United, we're untouchable. Sophia texted, Emergency meeting tonight. Margaret wants tougher penalties. She aimed to block amenities and lien properties for repeat offenders like me. I hired a county surveyor to check Margaret's lot, timing it for the next day. The meeting drew a crowd, sparked by my vandalism. Margaret railed against reckless residents, glaring at me. Her new rules would crush me. I stood, holding the deed. I invoke Article 8, the counter-strike clause. By finding my protected hunting rights, you've triggered a rule suspension. Michael projected the clause, citing the 2006 case. Whispers spread. Margaret scoffed. No such clause. Sophia stood. My article on your abuses, fines, fraud, harassment drops soon. George held up his files. I've tracked your bias since 2018. Residents shared tales. $600 for late holiday lights. $900 for unapproved sighting. Carla, Margaret's ally, broke. She ordered us to target specific homes. I feared being next. Margaret pounded her gavel, adjourning, but pointed at me. This isn't finished, Reed. The next morning, my surveyor confirmed my fence was legal. Margaret's crew arrived, claiming my fence encroached, waving a forged survey. I nodded to the county team. They verified my lines and found your gazebo 2 feet into the park. Margaret blanched. Helen played a recording from a public board meeting. Margaret admitting she knew about the encroachment. Minnesota's one-party consent, Helen smiled. Neighbors blocked Margaret from seizing the recorder. You judged us for years, I said. How's it feel? Days later, an election ousted Margaret's board. George became interim president, refunding my $700 and others' fines. Margaret faced county penalties for her gazebo and fraud probes for her survey. I rebuilt my garden, squirrel-proof. Helen gifted me a 1960s photo of Oak Ridge's hunting fields. My grandfather sold this land, she said. He added that clause to preserve its spirit. At a community barbecue, I posted a sign, hunting rights upheld by Minnesota law. Neighbors laughed, connected, and healed. Margaret's tyranny was gone, replaced by true community. The deed's trap didn't just save my garnet-freed Oak Ridge.